Hi, my name is Professor Maria Bates, and today I'm going to share some tips to make your essay writing go smoothly. The first tip I'd like to share with you is how to understand a prompt. A prompt is a list of instructions that your professor will give to you, and it'll let you know about how to set up your essay or how to write about your topic. All right, so there's three main steps that I'd like you to follow. I will go into more detail in a minute, but let's just briefly review them. The first step is you're going to identify your topic or purpose for the essay assignment. Two, you're going to list the action verbs in that prompt. And three, you're going to identify the constraints or the limitations that your professor has set forth for you to write the essay. So let's see how this is done. So step one is to find the main topic. And usually the main topic of what the essay is going to be about can be found in the first couple sentences. In this particular prompt on the left-hand side, what you're going to notice is in the very first sentence, the professor sets forth what the topic is, how social media influences public opinion. And so as soon as I know what the topic is, I'm going to write this down on a piece of paper. Right? It's that easy. Let's go to step two. Step two, we're going to list the actions that we see in the prompt. And what I mean by actions is we're going to underline or highlight the active verbs. So things that we actually will be doing for this essay. You see explore, delve, use, understand, provide, address. And what I've done on the right-hand side is I actually write down the sentence where I see the active verb. Explore social media influence, delve into ways social media influences public opinion, use 8 peer sources, and understand information dissemination. Okay, I could go on, but you get the idea. So I want to list these verbs because it's instructions for what I'll be doing in the essay. Once I have that understanding and I know the actions I'm going to take, I have a task list. But there's one more step. So let's go to step three. Step three are the list of constraints or the parameters or limitations that your professor has set forth for you to write the essay. Okay, so the limitations are like the time period or the particular materials that you might have to write about, or perhaps there's a research format that your professor is specifying. So let's see how this works out for us when we read this prompt. Okay, in the very first sentence, I see the kind of limitation is a research essay. So I know already I'm going to write down research. I also see that the professor wants me to talk about political discourse. So the limitation is that I'm not going to talk about all discourse. I'm going to talk about political discourse. So I'm going to write limited to political discourse. And specifically, they gave me a time limitation, 2016 presidential election. So I'm going to write that down, limited to the 2016 presidential election. I'm also going to look for any kind of requirements or limitations. Can I write it any way I want? Well, according to the professor's instructions or the prompt, he, she, or they are telling me to write an MLA format. So I'm going to write that down. Also, they limited me to 8 to 10 pages, and they also limited us, or as writers, to 8 peer-reviewed sources. And so I write this all down because it gives me an overview of basically what to expect and what the limitations are. And it helps me focus better. And so after I do that, after I know the topic, after I know the actions I need to take, and after I know the limitations I need to make sure that I follow, then I'm ready to actually do an outline. So let's talk about the outline process in my next tip. Let's say your professor has a really good sense of humor and gives you a prompt about how you would survive if a zombie apocalypse came to Pierce. What we're going to do is we're going to do a deductive brainstorm. So we can understand the prompt, we've already broken it down, and now what we want to do is we want to list all the things we do if the zombies came to Pierce College. Okay, how would I survive? All right, so just off the top of my head, I'd run to the cafeteria because I'd want food. I'd grab a flagpole. I might create a chair blockade. We might even use our professors as a shield, or we might escape to the health center. We might climb on top of the building. What I want you to do is I want you to be free with this. I want you to do this with reckless abandon. I do not want you to edit yourself. The more ideas you come up with, even better. So I chose run to the cafeteria because I would definitely run to the cafeteria to get food. And I think there's some forks there too that I can make a really good weapon. I would create a weapon, probably using the forks. Although, let's be honest, me personally, I'd probably be a zombie. But in my mind, I like to think I could create a weapon. And then third, maybe you think I'm going to use somebody as a shield. I'll use my professor. And you might even try to use me, and I understand. All right, so now that we've picked our 3 examples, we're ready to do our outline. Let's go to our next step. In the next step, I can easily create my outline, which is a thesis, what I'm going to be showing in my paper or my argument, and my examples. Okay, so what I'm going to do for my thesis is I answer the question, how would I survive if a zombie apocalypse happened at Pierce? And so I just repeat it. If a zombie apocalypse came to Pierce, I would do the following. And then I'll pick my 3 examples. And already I have the outline or the basic bones of what I'll be talking about in the essay. Okay, let's move on. We're ready to move and groove to the next type of brainstorm called the inductive brainstorm. And you're going to use this technique whenever you have a prompt or a topic that you're not familiar with. How do you begin to do the writing process? The first thing is you want to look at your prompt again. And just as we've been practicing, you want to break the prompt into 3 separate categories. What is the topic of the prompt? In this case, it's about the challenges people would face during a zombie apocalypse. Second, what are the actions? The actions are basically the verbs, and I'll look at the prompt and then I'll map it out. The professor wants me to answer questions, consider fictional examples, and use research management crisis responses during COVID. The third section is the constraints. What does the professor want me to focus on? The professor would like for me to focus on fictional examples about the zombie apocalypse and also how we did risk management during COVID. So I know those are my restraints, and that's what I'll be looking at for my paper. So now that I have my action plan or I've broken down the prompt, I now know what to do for my brainstorms. So the professor said to use fiction, so I have a brainstorm that I'm going to do about fictional examples. And the professor also said to use research about crisis management approaches during COVID. So I have a brainstorm bubble that I'm going to use, and I'm going to gather information, and then I'll fill out these bubbles. We've been practicing, I'm going to pick from these assortments of examples and articles. Once I get my examples, I can write a thesis to help me focus. And in this case, I'll just use my points. I'll say, in a zombie apocalypse, I believe these are the 3 things that might happen. Once you select your most promising examples, then you can create your outline for your essay. All right, let me do a very quick review for you just to reiterate the certain skills or the tips that you'll want to employ to make your writing go as smooth as possible for you. The first thing you want to do is you want to break down your prompt like we've been practicing. You want to create a brainstorm based on your prompt so you know where to step. You want to get the examples. If you know the examples, so you can do it already automatically. If you don't know the examples, you have to go gather your information. And then once you have your examples down, you can select the most promising examples that you feel you want to write about. And then from that brainstorm and selecting your examples, you are ready to create your outline for your essay. And the outline, again, is just a skeleton of what areas that you think you're going to be covering, and it really helps you focus as you start your drafting process. And at this point, as you do your outline, you might even want to go to our tutoring center. You might want to meet with your professor, and this is a really good way to get feedback. But once you have your ideas, you are ready to go. So congratulations. The next thing you could do is you could look at all these different tips, and I won't go over them in depth right now because of time, but if you want to just pause the screen and check it out, I have found these to be very helpful for me as a writer, and I hope that what I'm sharing with you will be of value to you.